There's roughly 44% of the vote in, about, I want to count 730,000 votes or so. It's about a 2 to 1, 63 to 37%. At this point in the night, I'm not sure if it could be going any better for Attorney General Ken Paxton. And I want to zoom in on one county in particular. That's Montgomery County. Forgive me as I try and zoom in right here. Montgomery County is one of those suburbs of Houston. This county is very interesting, okay? Because Montgomery County is one of the highest net Republican counties in the entire country. Okay, Cherokee County in Georgia, north of Atlanta, kind of comes to mind as a similar one. What I mean by that is Republicans tend to gain the most votes from this county of very few in the country. In the 2024 presidential election, President Trump garnered over 100,000 votes, a net of over 100,000 votes from this county alone. So whoever ends up winning this tonight could be very well on a path to victory, particularly when the primary back in March was only separated. Attorney General Paxton and Senator John Cornyn were only separated by a little over 30,000 votes, 1.5 points. And right now, just to give you an idea, Attorney General Paxton won this county by about 25, 27 points. He's winning by a whole lot more right now. What's that? 43 points right now. You got 57% of the vote in, and a lot of this could very well be early vote. Now, both candidates probably wanted to win the early vote tonight, of course, right? But I think particularly when it came to Senator John Cornyn, who performed well in the urban parts of the state, you know, the Dallas, the Bexar counties, the Harris counties, you know, the Tarrant counties. That's where he performed the best back in March. This was kind of where Attorney General Ken Paxton was able to make that runoff. And right now, not only is he exceeding those margins, he's nearly doubling them. And there's 57% of the votes in right now in Montgomery, so there's still a lot of votes that are left to be counted. And you're also seeing that not nearly as many votes are in. I kind of want to zoom out right now to get an idea. Okay, so there haven't been any votes at 45% counted. There's a few more that are coming in. In the primary, about 2 million people voted, okay? So right now, we're vastly under that number. If that stays, it's maybe 1.5 million, which would be more, actually, than the 2022 Attorney General primary. And that's also something very important to note. You may remember that Attorney General Paxton actually faced former Land Commissioner George P. Bush in a runoff in 2022. And what was his margin in that race? 2 to 1. What's his margin right now? It's pretty similar, right? But now there are some parts where Senator Cornyn is doing well tonight, particularly in Dallas County. This is where he got a lot of the vote, but that's when you're trying to win in this state, and I'm just looking at this for the first time right now, he's only winning by, that's less than 1,000 votes right there for Senator Cornyn. And that's 50% of the vote in. He garnered, I want to actually take a look here what the exact margin was back in Dallas County in the March election. If I can't find it quickly, I'm not going to bother. Okay, the margin in Dallas County, just to give you an idea, was Cornyn by 18 points back in the March primary. He's leading by 1.5, and there's 50% of the vote in. You're going to need to do a bit better than that. You're going to do a lot better than that if you're Senator Cornyn. So now you got to start asking yourself, okay, where is the remaining vote coming in? Where have we not counted? We haven't counted yet in El Paso. I don't even know if the polls have not closed there. Remember, it's mountain time over there. We're in central time over here in East Texas. So in El Paso, they haven't counted there. That was a pretty good place for Senator Cornyn back in the primary. Do I have those? Yeah, he garnered there by roughly 9 points in the March primary. But those haven't counted yet. Maybe that's a big bit of support for him there. But again, right now, Attorney General Paxton is leading in Houston. So 57% of the vote is in. Paxton's leading 2 to 1 after Cornyn won that county back in March. Tarrant County, Cornyn did well. Back in March, Cornyn +7. He's losing that county. Smith County, Paxton's leading by 6. That's a similar margin to his statewide. So right now, you're not doing as well as you were in the urban areas. Okay, so what is the plan? Let me zoom in here to get you a better idea. Oh, this piece of paper is kind of colliding. Let me get rid of that. Okay. And also, Travis County hasn't been counted yet. This is the big one. You know, traditionally a pretty democratic part of the state when the general election comes around. But, of course, right now we're talking about a Republican primary. So that hasn't been counted yet. That could go for Senator Cornyn. But right now, you know, if you're Senator Cornyn, you're probably trying to gain on how you did in the urban parts of the state where you did gain traction back in March. Right now in Harris County, Houston, you're losing. Right now in Bexar County, San Antonio, you're losing. Roughly 60 to 40 right there. In Dallas County, you're winning, but barely. And still, we haven't counted the RGV yet. This is an area, very interesting part of the country, that shifted quite significantly to the right over the last couple presidential elections. Senator Cornyn did well here, and right now, well, that's Starr County. He's losing. I mean, there aren't a lot of votes there. I don't want to, you know, extrapolate too much from 38 votes, but I think you get the idea. And then when you come right here to Nacogdoches, okay, of course you got Sam Houston State University right over here. Paxton's leading. I mean, East Texas. I mean, this whole map is just, I'm going to zoom out a bit here. This whole map right now is just covered in red if you're Attorney General Paxton. And have any more votes come in? I think a couple more. But that margin is not, it's not changing. So if you're Senator Cornyn right now who's trying to run for a fifth term, you're hoping that you can continue to gain, or that you can at least gain something out of, you know, Harris County, Houston, do well in the urban areas. You're hoping you can increase your lead in Dallas. 50% of the votes are in. Okay, you're hoping that you can absolutely overperform in Travis County, that you can do well in Bexar County, San Antonio, increase your margin there. But right now, I mean, just everything, and I kind of want to get an idea of the uncounted votes. We don't have an idea of where, well, of course they're uncounted in El Paso. But right now, this is going very, very well. If you're Attorney General Paxton, who again has succeeded in recent runoffs, won by roughly a 2-to-1 margin back in 2022 after that runoff against Land Commissioner George P. Bush, who, as you remember, former Congressman, East Texas Congressman Louis Gohmert, actually ran in that race, part of the reason why it ultimately went to a runoff. But the big difference between that race and this one was Attorney General Paxton garnered, he roughly was ahead of his challenger then, George P. Bush, who came in second by 20 points. The March primary this time around with Senator Cornyn and Congressman Wesley Hunt, they were separated by about 1.5. So a very close race in that regard. But with the endorsement of President Donald Trump, and particularly this anti-incumbent sentiment we're frankly seeing across the country, you know, in recent weeks, that could very well be going in Attorney General Paxton's favor. But again, and I want to say this importantly, not all the votes are in. Less than 50% are in. There's still a lot of votes to come in. But right now, if you're Attorney General Paxton, it's looking pretty good for you right now.
Now, also tell me, because you did remind us that Wesley Hunt ran in this race in the original vote. If you could remind us, who did he end up endorsing somebody?
He did end up endorsing quite quickly after President Trump made his endorsement in this race for Attorney General Paxton. Wesley Hunt ended up endorsing Attorney General Paxton. And Wesley Hunt's area, his congressional district, is right here in the Houston area. And again, you know, Attorney General Paxton, that's where he's performing. He's outperforming his margins significantly compared to March. So that could absolutely be playing a role there tonight. Those, I think it was roughly 13.5% of the vote Congressman Wesley Hunt got, about 300,000 votes. In a low turnout Republican primary, or a lower turnout, I should say, that can make the difference. That could ultimately make the difference, particularly when we're talking about those suburbs of Houston, like Fort Bend. It's another big suburb. Attorney General Paxton performing roughly 2-to-1 there. Again, I don't want to talk about Montgomery too much, but again, this is a big Republican county, 72 to 28 right there. I mean, those are big margins.
All right. Is there anything that we might have not touched upon yet? I know that there's still places where we're waiting for more of those results to come in. Some pretty significant chunks of votes still yet to come in. Obviously, we're looking at El Paso. I just noticed that we do have results in from Travis County in Austin, where
okay, that's a big deal, actually. That's a big deal. Okay, 50. Okay, we might have just gotten. I don't want to assume anything, but this could very well be early vote. They may still be waiting to count Election Day vote. I'm not sure how much of this is Election Day. But right there, Senator Cornyn is leading by 8. I'm going to go back to my handy-dandy chart. Okay, how much did he win this county by? If I can get an idea. Plus 24. Plus 24 in the March primary. 52% of the vote in, what's that, 8? So Senator Cornyn is vastly underperforming his margins compared to March. Right now, I feel like that's the story of the night. I mean, everywhere, even in Travis. I believe this is where Senator Cornyn lives, is in the Austin area. And right now, I mean, he's just not, if you're Senator Cornyn, you are hoping to turn out folks in the urban areas who turned out back in March. You were hoping to outperform how you did in March. Both of those aren't coming true right now if you're Senator Cornyn. So you mentioned earlier, where votes outstanding. El Paso, one of the biggest cities in the state, still remains to be counted. Has Amarillo counted yet? Sometimes it could be these Lubbock County's counted. I'm sorry for all my Amarillo. Okay, Potter County's in, 53% of the vote in. Yeah, Attorney General Paxton's leading there. So there's a couple of spots where there's uncounted vote. I mean, Dallas got 50% of the vote in, obviously, one of the biggest counties in the state in terms of population. A lot of vote is still going to come out of there. But I'm trying to do some math right now, and again, those are similar. I mean, that's almost close to 50-50.
Michael, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think we do officially have a projection in that race from the Associated Press.
There it is.
Ken Paxton has won the GOP nomination for U.S. Senate. This capping off a very tense primary election night. It seems as though it was that Trump endorsement that might have sealed the deal.
Yeah, it could have been that Trump endorsement that sealed the deal, Leo. Alongside that anti-incumbent sentiment we've seen over the past few weeks, just to give you an idea of what we've seen electorally the past few weeks, we've seen incumbent state senators in Indiana lose their primaries after President Trump endorsed their challengers after those incumbents decided not to redistrict. In Louisiana, we saw the first incumbent Republican senator lose renomination after 12 years, that being Senator Bill Cassidy. And he didn't just lose renomination, he garnered third in the primary, where the first place challenger, Congresswoman Julia Letlow, nearly, I believe, got more than 20 points over him. And Congressman Thomas Massie in Kentucky ended up losing to a Trump-endorsed challenger because Massie, as you may remember, garnered a lot of criticism because of his votes, particularly when it came to the Epstein files. And now Senator John Cornyn is going to be denied a 5th term to the United States Senate by Attorney General Paxton. Voters were able to look past the impeachments. They were able to look past the indictments, many viewing him as that MAGA firebrand. That base wanted to go more towards that side instead of sticking with an incumbent senator. President Trump said that while he liked John Cornyn, he was not with him, when he needed him the most, particularly before as he was running for his 2024 election. But folks, looking past, what many see as, some political baggage in Attorney General Paxton. That's what Senator Cornyn has been talking about, over the course of this campaign. If Attorney General Paxton's the nominee, it could not only lose them the Senate, it could lose them valuable House races in a midterm election where the incumbent president, the person who controls the White House, typically doesn't perform well. So what does this mean? So right now, Attorney General Paxton is going to face State Representative James Tallarico in the November general election. And we're going to see, how much money is poured into this state. Again, Attorney General Paxton viewed by many as the more vulnerable incumbent. But I'll remind everyone, a Democratic senator has not won in Texas since former vice presidential nominee Lloyd Benson in 1988. It's been decades, and Attorney General Ken Paxton could very well be favored heading into the November election. But folks siding with him, his, characteristics, many view him as more towards that MAGA base, towards that Trump-aligned movement, and now Senator Cornyn is going to be denied a 5th term. From when I was last year, there weren't 73% of the votes that were counted. What's that? About 1.1 million votes. So this has already exceeded the 2022 primary runoff numbers, and there's still, 27% of the vote to be counted. You're probably asking yourself, how exactly did Paxton end up winning? He just exceeded his margins from March and kept building on them in parts of the state where he didn't even do well. Harris County, he did not end up winning in March, ended up winning today roughly, that's almost 2-1. Well, that's 59% of the votes that are still counted. So still a lot to be remained there. Still a lot remaining there. Montgomery County, 4/5 of that is counted. I mean, look at that. That's 45 points right there in a county that Paxton won by around 25 points back in March. So he's just continuing to build in a primary that did end up being lower turnout, as many expected. In Dallas, that's very close. I mean, that's near neck and neck. That's roughly 1,000 votes separating the two. Still more votes that needs to be counted, but Cornyn needed to do better there in order to run it up. In Travis County, I guess where Cornyn was probably hoping to get the most votes as possible tonight, run up those margins. Cornyn just, that's a 6.5, 6.4 point margin, only 3,000 votes. I mean, when Paxton is leading by 1,000 votes here in Tyler County, by 300 votes here in Houston County, by 1,000 votes there in Panola County, and by 30,000 votes there in Harris County, I mean, the Cornyn just doesn't, it's not enough to catch up to that margin. So Paxton outperforming, pretty much everything he did back in the primary, and he will end up facing in State Representative James Tallarico, Democrat Representative James Tallarico in the fall, in what is sure to be one of the big matchups heading into November.